Cuba, it's me! Welcome to episode 289 of The Willu Show, which stands for Wrestling is Life. Life is Wrestling. Now, today I wanted to have a little fun doing one of those hypothetical things that I conjure up in my mind. But what if Ontario had a Wrestling Hall of Fame? Now, I don't know. Maybe they do. I Googled it. I couldn't find anything except for like amateur and high school wrestling or like Olympic wrestling, but I imagine if they had a professional wrestling Ontario Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure they have a Canadian one, but I mean, strictly Ontario. If they did, who would you put in it? And why would you put them in there? What would the criteria be that would be for you to put someone in the Ontario Hall of Fame? Obviously, they'd have to be someone that wrestled a lot in Ontario, that somehow maybe put on a lot of shows if they were a promoter. Maybe they were just a manager or a rep, but they had a really long tenure and they just been at a lot of shows and helps create some magical moments. Or maybe they're someone that didn't wrestle that long in Ontario, but they made it to somewhere in the big leagues and became famous, which in turn kind of gets the more eyes on the Ontario product. See, I just moved to Ontario in the year 2000 when I was 18 to train for wrestling school. So before that, I really don't know much about Ontario wrestling except for what I've picked up over the years, what I've heard in the locker rooms, what some of the other workers have told me. I constantly get schooled by Harry D, where he tells me about the past, and I love finding about the history and the people that paved the way for us. Now, I'm not going to pick anybody specifically myself, because like I said, the last 17 years is all I really know. But I mean, the obvious choices would be the guys who made it to like the Fed, like Edge and Christian, and I believe Test was from Ontario. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks. Val Venus, Eric Young, Bobby Roode, Ty Dillinger, those kind of guys. Because like I said, it gets more eyes on the product, and it's like, wow, they're from Ontario. Then that just kind of puts over Ontario in the long grand scheme of things, I guess you could say. But then you have the guys that never made it big. Maybe it's somebody, the pioneers. Like, what about the pioneers, the people that got wrestling in Ontario? I know there was a lot of history in Maple Leaf Gardens wrestling, and Angela Moscow had a lot of Mosca had a lot of history running shows in Hamilton there. I certainly wouldn't put Ike Shaw on there. I'll tell you that right now. I said I wouldn't put Ike Shaw, just so everybody knows. But I'd probably put Harry D. He's been reffing in Ontario for like 30 years, and he's always contributing and still now giving his knowledge and helping out at the wrestling schools and whatnot. And I'd put him on there. But what about like Chuck the Butcher Sims and Bobby Bass and Ron Hutchison? Yeah, some of the trainers. We forgot the trainers. And I forgot Santino. He obviously came from Ontario and made it to the Fed. Scott D'Amore would probably definitely be the Ontario Wrestling Hall of Fame. He's done a lot for wrestling in Ontario over the years. Who else would you put in there? I would say maybe Geza, maybe. I mean, it's subjective and everyone has different opinions, but just because he went to MMA and he did a few stints in doing dark matches for WWE or whatnot, maybe the Highlanders, they got their wrestling start in Ontario and then they made it to the Fed, so maybe they would be in it. But what about some of the guys, that have been around for a long time? Maybe like if you're looking at like 15 to 20 years in Ontario, like what about like the Tyson Dukes and the Cody Deaners and those guys, or even some of the other guys like Marcus Ryan, he's been around for a long time, or I know Lee Artiste was around for a long time, and some of these guys helped train people too. So it's really hard. It depends what the criteria that has to be met. How many shows have they had to participate in? How many years do they have to be born in Ontario? I don't think they do, because as long as they wrestled in Ontario primarily for a good chunk of time, I think would be the criteria. There's so many people I'm probably missing. Maybe like Tornado would be on there. You got to think about the people that trained. Rob Fiego would probably be on there, and the people that trained the crop of talent. You probably put Michael Elgin on there because he's done really well for himself and started here. And then what about like I said, the people that train people, but also just promoters that have been around for a long time and have been booking shows. Now, When I first started wrestling, there was only a couple promotions. There was like ACW and RWA and maybe one or two more, and now there's tons. But out of all these promotions, I don't see. I guess BCW's been around for quite a long time, although they've had their ups and downs for been slow and then big years and whatnot and everything else. So it just depends. Managers, who would you put for managers? There's like Jesse Jones and Jay Moore and Autobahn would probably be up there just for they've been around for a long time. Those kind of guys. There's got to be a couple females that would be on that list for sure, and there would also probably be like some midget wrestlers or even just people that were maybe like announcers or maybe the behind the scenes, like the Ultimate Warrior wanted the Warrior Award for people who help out. What about people that are just help put on the shows by being a ring announcer or setting up chairs for a long time? But I really want to know from you guys. It'd be great if we could get some people that know the history, they can go back a long time, because out of wrestlers wrestling right now, there's got to be under 5 that deserve to be on the list because it's current. Like, you want to go back and get the people, like the people that are now in like 5 to 10 years, they'd be eligible if this would make believe Hall of Fame really did exist. But I mean, you want to go back, and so the people with the knowledge, I really appreciate if you could comment because you have the history and you can go back and whatnot. But I missed a lot of people, so I just kind of, I didn't pick any of those guys. I just put their names out there to get people thinking and see kind of what I was looking at. But I really want to hear from you guys. Tell me, if there was an Ontario Wrestling Hall of Fame, who would you pick, why, and what would your criteria be for putting them in here? Because as always, on the Willu Show, like or you get a leg drop, comment or you get a clothesline, subscribe or you get a suplex. I'm your host, Elian Habanero. I love wrestling. Cuba.